What if strategy could sing? What if every plan, every quiet move, every sudden sacrifice carried a rhythm you could feel and a harmony you could almost hear? Chess and music look like distant worlds, one a battlefield of geometry, the other a landscape of sound. But beneath the surface they share a single engine, patterns unfolding in time. A chessboard is our staff of lines and spaces. 64 squares, black and white, like keys repeating a simple rule set. The pieces are instruments with distinct voices. Bishops speak along diagonals, long legato phrases. Knights leap in syncopated steps, offbeat, like a jazz riff that twists where you don't expect. Rooks are straight percussion, drumming files and ranks. The queen is a virtuosic soloist, able to cross styles at will. And pawns, the heartbeat, keep time, steady and incremental, turning silence into structure. Music begins with a key and a tempo. Chess begins with a center and a clock. If you want to understand any position, listen first to its tempo. How fast is the idea moving? In blitz, everything snaps like presto. Instinct leads, motifs are short. Dissonance is tolerated because there's no time to resolve it properly. In classical time controls, we play adagio to allegro moderato. Ideas can breathe. You can hold a chord, a bind on a file or a diagonal, long enough for the tension to grow, then release it into a clean cadence. Openings are motifs. You learn a handful of shapes, not to memorize every note, but to internalize a theme. The Italian game is a bright, open chord. The French defense is a darker, closed voicing. The Sicilian is a drum groove with offbeat punches on the C-file. You don't copy a recording, you learn the motif and then vary it. The same motif can be played in a different key. A structure from one opening can reappear after a few precise transpositions of moves, and suddenly your hands, your pieces, know where to go. Harmony in chess is simply good coordination. A harmonious position is one where your pieces reinforce each other's notes, squares and lines without stepping on each other's toes. A rook behind a passed pawn, a bishop on a long diagonal aimed through a gap, a king quietly tucking behind a pawn shield. These are consonant chords. Dissonance is when lines collide without resolution. Doubled pawns you can't use, pieces stepping on each other's roots, a knight occupying the square a bishop needs. Sometimes you embrace dissonance on purpose, like a suspended chord, if you can resolve it at the right moment. A long pawn chain pointing at the enemy king may sound muddy, but if you break at the base, you get a clean resolution. Counterpoint is where the relationship becomes obvious. In music, two melodies weave independently but fit. In chess, your plans and your opponent's plans create two lines of motion that must interlock. A kingside attack is one line, a queenside minority advance is another. Both can be correct, and both can gain or lose momentum depending on the harmony or clash between them. A pin is a suspended note, held and held, until it resolves with a capture or a clearance. A skewer is a voice leading. The heavy piece behind steps forward once the front note is forced to move. Deflection tactics are modulations, forcing the melody to a new key that you prepared 2 moves ago. Rhythm is how you calculate. Some players count moves like beats, 1, 2, 3, always giving the position a moment of silence before pushing the next idea. Others ride a groove, flowing through candidate moves like a phrase. If your calculation accelerates too early, you rush and drop notes. If you stretch every beat, you drift into time trouble and the music stutters. Good rhythm means you can change gears on demand, a quiet move to reset the groove, then a burst of tactical 16th notes when the board asks for speed. Dynamics matter. Not every move is fortissimo. Too many loud notes and your plan becomes noise. You need pianissimo moves, those subtle improvements that tighten screws. A king step, a rook lift without contact, a pawn move that takes away a single square. These are the soft crescendos that prepare the big theme. Then, when the position finally opens and your pieces are coordinated, the attack plays itself. Files open like a cymbal crash, diagonals sing, and the final tactic lands like a perfect cadence. Silence matters too. In music, the rest is not absence, it's shape. In chess, Zugzwang is a sculpted silence. Any note you play makes the harmony worse. Stalemate is a closed cadence. All notes are locked. The piece can't breathe. Quiet positions teach you to hear the space between ideas. When you stop forcing and start listening to the position, the next move often appears on its own. Form ties everything together. Sonata form starts with an exposition, 2 themes introduced, then development, where those themes are twisted, inverted, fragmented, recombined. Finally, recapitulation. The themes return, now clarified by their journey. Chess mirrors this. The opening exposes themes, central control, a pawn lever, a sensitive diagonal. The middle game develops them. You relocate pieces, change tensions, trade one dissonance for another. The end game recapitulates. The board is stripped to its essence. Motifs return, opposition, triangulation, the square of the pawn. The conclusion is clean, almost pure, the coda of a simple king and pawn versus king, where each step is a note in a children's song. Pieces have timbre, color. Knights feel plucked. You touch one note, it resonates in an unexpected square. Bishops feel bowed. They sustain meaning along distant lines. Rooks are brass, powerful but sometimes blunt if they can't breathe. The open file is their air. The queen is an entire orchestra, incredible but easy to overpower a position if used without restraint. The king is the conductor, weak at the start, maestro at the end. In the endgame, the king steps onto the stage and suddenly the whole sound changes. Structure is harmony. Doubled isolated pawns can sound like clashing intervals, but doubled pawns controlling key squares can be a crunchy jazz chord that works because of the context. A backward pawn is a tense note. You keep it if it holds a square that matters more than its weakness costs. A pawn majority is a swelling chorus. It promises a passed pawn, the melody that can carry the rest of the piece to victory. Improvisation lives inside rules. Jazz doesn't ignore harmony, it dances on it. Great attacking chess doesn't ignore principles, it bends them with purpose. You can play a move that looks wrong, pushing the h-pawn in front of your king, sacrificing on an empty square, if you feel the underlying rhythm and can hear the resolution a few moves later. Creativity is not randomness. It's the courage to choose a line because you understand how its tension will resolve into checkmate or a one endgame. Memory is your ear. Musicians do ear training. Chess players do pattern training. Scales and arpeggios are your tactical themes. Forks, pins, skewers, discovered attacks. Etudes are your endgame studies. Distilled positions that teach a single sound. Opposition, the Lucina bridge, the Philidor hold. With enough repetition, you stop reading note by note or move by move. You read chunks. A bishop on b2, a rook on c1, a knight jumping to e5, that's a chord you've heard before, and you know how it resolves. Practice has its tempo too. Some days you push fast, tactics with a clock to sharpen your reflex. Other days you slow down, analysis without a clock to polish your tone. A metronome can help musicians build evenness. A simple timer can help you build calculation discipline. 2 minutes to scan candidate moves, 1 minute to visualize the main line, 30 seconds to sanity check counterplay. Regular rhythm turns improvement from hope into habit. Emotion colors sound and chess alike. Tilt is a loud, distorted chord that drowns your hearing. A string of wins tempts you into playing too fast, like rushing a chorus you love. A string of losses tempts you into playing too slowly, afraid to strike the next note. The remedy is the same: return to the pulse. Breathe. Reconnect with the motif of the position, what matters here, now, and play that note cleanly. Listening is everything. In music, you listen to the ensemble. In chess, you listen to the board. What is your opponent saying with their last move? Are they changing key, shifting the fight from kingside to queenside? Are they trying to accelerate the tempo with a pawn break? If you only play your own melody, you'll clash. If you listen and respond with counterpoint, the whole composition becomes richer, even when you disagree. There will be moments that feel like magic. A quiet prophylactic move that stops 3 ideas at once. A sacrifice that rips open the king like a cymbal hit at exactly the right bar. A precise endgame tempo, waiting a single move so the opponent's king is shouldered 1 rank farther, like holding a fermata 1 breath longer and releasing it to silence. Those moments live at the edge where understanding and intuition meet. And then there are the endings that choose beauty over certainty. Musicians sometimes take the long lyrical cadence instead of the quick final chord. In chess, you might decline a tactical shortcut because there's a clearer endgame that teaches more. You convert without haste, repeating checks to find the exact harmony, refusing to rush the last phrase. Winning beautifully is not ego, it's respect for the craft. If you're a musician, bring a metronome to your calculation. Find a steady pulse for your thinking. If you're a chess player, bring scales to your practice. Repeat tactical themes until they sing without effort. If you do both, you'll notice the same sensation in each, a flow state where ideas line up on their own, where your hands and eyes and memory agree on the next note, the next move. Why does chess feel like music? Because both are languages of pattern in time. Both demand structure and reward risk. Both punish noise and celebrate clarity. And both can move you, actually move you, when a plan unfolds exactly as imagined, or when you find an answer you didn't know you had in you. Some games end in a blaze of sound. Some end in a whisper. Either way, when the final note lands, checkmate or handshake, you hear it. A phrase completed. A story told. And for a second the board is quiet, the room is still, and the silence is music. If this resonated with you, share it with a friend who loves patterns. And the next time you sit at a board or pick up an instrument, listen for the motif waiting under your fingertips. Then play. Let's take the metaphor and make it practical. Imagine you have a favorite 4-bar riff you know by heart. In chess, that riff is a small plan you can execute under pressure. Fix a weakness, improve the worst piece, create a second threat. You don't need a symphony, just a motif you can repeat until the position gives you something bigger. The trick is to hear the position's key before you play. Is this minor, defensive, restrained, or major, active open lines? Your pawn structure is the key signature. Closed chains push you toward minor keys. Maneuver, prepare, don't force. Open files spark major keys. Develop fast, seize the initiative, let the melody breathe. There's a training loop musicians use that transfers perfectly. Slow, even, accurate, then fast. Take a simple tactical theme, like a knight fork, and run it like a scale. 10 puzzles at a pace where you never clip a note. Then raise the tempo. The goal isn't speed for its own sake, it's control at any tempo. If you rush before your hands know the shape, your playing gets noisy. If you never accelerate, you never learn to sing inside time trouble. A good daily rhythm is 20 minutes of scales, tactics, 10 minutes of long tones, positional drills where you hold tension, and one short etude, an endgame study, to finish on clarity. Counterpoint is a superpower. Train yourself to hold two melodies in your head, yours and your opponent's. Say your plan is to attack the king side, but your opponent is preparing a minority advance on the queen side. Can both ideas exist? Yes, if you can conduct them. Count the beats until each plan lands. If their minority strike takes 4 beats and your attack needs 6, you must either accelerate yours or disrupt theirs. That's real calculation. Not just lines of moves, but tempo awareness. Whose phrase resolves first? Voice leading explains piece coordination better than any rule. Voice leading means moving each voice the smallest distance to reach the harmony you want. In chess, don't leap around hunting magic squares. Glide. A bishop from c1 to b2 to a1 to c3 is a smooth voice leading that gradually increases its influence without clashing with your other pieces. A rook lift that uses a quiet intermediate square is often better than a flashy swing that leaves holes. When two pieces aim at the same target from complementary angles, like third and fifth in a chord, you get stability and punch. When you get lost, return to the bass line. In music, the bass and drums keep everyone honest. In chess, your bass line is the pawn structure and king safety. Ask, what's the next clean beat? Improve the king, fix the worst piece, or take the most useful space. Don't audience surf on tactics when the rhythm section is off. If your king is airy and your pawns are hanging, every solo you attempt will crack. Memory loves patterns that sing. You can force this by naming your shapes. Call that kingside pawn storm a symbol crash. Call that dark square blockade a minor chord lock. It sounds silly, but it sticks. When the same pattern appears, your brain retrieves not only the image but the feel, the dynamic and timing that worked. That feel is what stops blunders. You recognize pre-consciously that a move jars against the established key. Performance nerves? Treat the start of each game like a downbeat. 2 deep breaths before move 1. 1 minute of scanning the whole board without touching a piece, like listening to the room before you play. In time pressure, speak your rhythm out loud in your head. Scan threats, candidate moves, calculate, blunder check. You're not calming yourself with vague positivity, you're restoring tempo. Let's walk a miniature composition. You have a slightly better center, your bishop pair hums quietly. That's your key, a light, open voicing. The plan motif is simple. Restrain, c5, fix, d6 as a hook, then double rooks on the e-file. You lead with a quiet move, a half step that stops their freeing break. You tuck your king, you lift a rook, you overprotect a central square. The opponent counters with a queenside probe. You acknowledge the counter melody with one accurate defensive note, nothing more. Now the harmony is ready. You push e5 at the exact bar where their pieces are one tempo late, lines open, your dark squared bishop becomes a soloist. You trade into a favorable endgame where your king walks like a cellist stepping forward for the coda. No fireworks, just resolution. If you replay the game later, you'll notice the phrases prep, tension, release, cadence. Improvisation deserves respect. It's not chaos, it's grammar on the fly. Give yourself constraints to improvise against. Every move must improve my worst piece unless I have a concrete tactical reason not to. No pawn pushes unless they gain a tempo or fix a weakness. If a trade doesn't move me toward the endgame I want, I don't take it. Those rules are your chord changes. Inside them you can play freely. You'll be shocked how creative you feel when you stop chasing random notes and start exploring within a structure. Here's a drill that fuses both arts: metronome calculation. Set a timer that ticks every 30 seconds. In the first tick, you only list candidate moves. Second tick, you visualize the main line for your top candidate. Third tick, you look for your opponent's most annoying reply and one resource you're missing. Then act. This forces phrasing, separate beats for idea, elaboration and critique, so your thinking doesn't blur. It also teaches you to respect rests. Sometimes the best move is a waiting move that keeps your shape and hands, the dissonance, back to your opponent. Endgames are minimalism. Stripped harmony, exposed melody. Practice them the way musicians practice long tones. Hold the idea. Feel the opposition not as a trick, but as the simplest possible groove. You step, they step. You mirror, they drown in lack of space. Lucina and Philidor are not trivia. They are cadences you should be able to hum. If you can sing the bridge position, where the rook checks from the side while the king hides, you won't panic when the board is empty and the audience is your own heartbeat. Common errors translate cleanly. Overplaying is playing too loud for the room, throwing pawns at a defended king because you want drama. Underplaying is whispering when the score calls for a break, declining to open the position when your development screams for air. Autopilot is noodling, making normal moves without listening. The cure is always the same. Listen to the chord that's actually on the board. If the pawn structure changed, the key changed. Modulate your plan or you'll be off pitch for the rest of the game. A final experiment for your next session. Before you move, name the bar you're in. Exposition, develop and claim space. Development, reroute pieces to the tension. Recapitulation, convert and simplify. Naming the bar forces you to respect form, which keeps you from mixing themes that don't belong together. If you feel the need to sacrifice, ask whether the music has earned the crescendo. If you feel the urge to trade, ask whether you're ending the song because you're tired or because the cadence is ready. You might notice something change. Your games will start to feel less like a series of puzzles and more like performances with intention. Your mistakes will sound different. You'll hear the exact bar where you rushed or refused the needed dissonance. Your wins will feel quieter and cleaner. Not every game will be beautiful, but more of them will end with that click, the last note landing where it always wanted to land. Why tie chess to music at all? Because metaphors are tools. When a position refuses to explain itself, a sound can. A rhythm can. A single word like counterpoint can remind you to consider what the other side is singing. And sometimes that's all you need. One fresh angle, one beat restored, and the move appears as if it were already written into the score. If this speaks to you, try one drill tonight. 10 minutes of scales, tactics at a calm tempo. 5 minutes of long tones, an endgame study held until you feel the resolution. One short piece, play a rapid game where your only rule is to keep your baseline solid. Then close the board, pick up an instrument or put on a song, and listen for the same movements. Motif, tension, release. The language is the same. The voice is yours. Play.